Chapter 14, The Explorer's Journal. The following afternoon, Felicity taught Arthur to make egg-free marsh cakes. As soon as Felicity had found out about his allergy, she began creating all manner of foods free from the ship's store of egg powder. The marsh cakes were her latest experiment and were green as the North Swampland because of the pinch of bog herb and the strange mix of sweet and savoury. Arthur munched as he looked through the large binoscope on the bow, scanning the horizon. He could see the Fontaine, but the other two ships were out of range. Boo! Made you jump. Without looking up, he passed Maudie a marsh cake. No, you didn't. I heard you coming a mile off. Ew, this looks weird. Trust me, you'll want to try it. She took a reluctant nibble, and a huge smile broadened on her face. Have you got any more? He passed her another. Why didn't you come to the gallery for 11s? Harriet was showing me how to lock in the turbine for the water change. Riveting. He yawned dramatically. It was riveting, actually. At least 15 rivets along the engine block's seam. She punched his iron arm so it rang. He shook his head and smiled, then focused on the distance again. Can you see the others? The Fontaine isn't far ahead. What about the Bestwick Ford ship? It's actually called the Firebird, after a mythical bird of the East. They claim to be the only humans to have encountered one, and no, I can't see it. And the Victorious? He shook his head. Long gone. Don't worry about that, she said knowingly. He put the binoscope down and looked at her. Why? Well, if you paid any attention to the things I try to teach you, tell me and I'll give you another marsh cake. Maudie smiled. It's a type of engine power each ship has. The Fontaine is small, and Harriet says it will never make the crossing to the third continent. She said the two smaller ships are naive about the distance they need to cover. Also, the Bestwick Ford's Firebird has triple engine and is what Forbes calls a right pitch guzzler. Eudora Vane's ship is big and fast, and she also relies on heavy amounts of pitch to drive her pumps, but her stores are bigger. So far, the Victorious has been pushed hard to get ahead of the competition. I've completed the calculations. She pulled out a piece of paper with scribbles and symbols all over it. She shrugged. It's like a different language. She tutted, tugged him towards the wheel, pulled a map from the stand and spread it on the deck. She pointed to Lontown. Here, the Victorious is fully loaded with fuel. She is heavy and pushing her engines to full power, so she's speeding off ahead, but still within our sight. Arthur nodded. When they reach the coal dam, see, they've burnt half their fuel. They're much lighter, but their engines are still running at maximum, so they are going even faster. She whooshed her finger across the sea to the second continent. Based on size, capacity, estimated weight, speed, and so on, at the rate Eudora is pushing the Victorious, they'll need to refuel in the citadel of the second continent. The Fontaine and Firebird will have to refuel before that, and they'll soon fall behind. From the citadel, the Victorious will push on to this point of the second continent, the last post, and refuel again if they can, so they'll be heading across the silent sea on a full tank. Are you following? Surely this is bad news for us all. With a full tank, they'll speed across the third continent. He ran his finger across the great white expanse and stopped at the area marked Unknown, where huge mountains were in a semicircle around an enormous frozen lake. Right. Except you're forgetting one crucial thing. Their eyes met. What? They've got to make it back. There's no pitch to buy in the third continent. They'll have to cut their speed as they advance, or they'll burn their fuel store too quickly and be stranded. Ah, right. You're a genius, Maud. Not really. Harriet helped me. I've calculated that I'll have to half their speed, which means we'll catch them up and take over right about... Maudie ran her finger across the map and then tapped on the area of the third continent. We maintained a steady pace, take over and reach the great frozen lake of the third continent first. That's as far as anyone has gone before. Then we find a way to get past the Shard Mountains. Harriet has a secret idea, based on how the Vane expedition described the mountains in their report to the Geographical Society. She suspects they may be a certain type of ancient volcanic formation with tunnels that cross through, much like the ancient volcanic islands in the north, known as the Big Four, which she explored a few years ago. We travel through the mountains to get to the South Polaris first. But doesn't the water of the Aurora engine need changing? What if we can't make it back and all the water is frozen over? So you have to be listening, she said with a satisfied smirk. We're heading across a land of snow, but the frozen lake is full of cracks and shifts. We will send our pipes down into one of the gaps so water won't be a problem. Ah, of course, he said. Why are you two snickering so loudly? Said Felicity. She trotted across the deck and set down a tea tray, rattling with china cups and a teapot. There you are, my poppets. She took a handful of marsh cakes from her apron and put them on the tray. Maudie quickly grabbed two, then looked a bit sheepish and handed one to Arthur. Harriet left the wheel to another crew member and joined them, followed by Queenie, who curled up at Maudie's feet and purred happily while Maudie stroked her chin. Parthena swooped from the sky and landed on Arthur's extended iron arm. Queenie hissed at her, then went back to purring. Parthena gave an irritated screech. Harriet laughed. Perhaps they'll grow on each other. It's funny, Artie, but Parthena always chooses to come to you, just like she did Dad. Arthur smiled. It somehow made him feel closer to Dad. So, forgive the pun, but have you brought your brother up to speed? Harriet said. Maudie nodded. Taking a pencil from behind her ear, Harriet drew an X on the edge of the area marked Everlasting Forest. This is about where we'll set down when we reach the frozen lake. The last expedition reported a great semicircle of mountains, impassable by Sky-Ship because of the close density, sheer faces and height. The balloon can't take the expansion at that altitude. They make the northeast mountains of the first continent look like babies. Felicity added, taking off her great shoes and wiggling her toes in the sun. So that's where Dad's ship might still be. We may certainly pass it, although who knows what the elements will have done to it. Harriet put a hand on his shoulder. Felicity poured the tea, sweet and strong for what's ahead, dearies. By Maudie's calculations, if the wind is favourable, we should reach there a day and a half ahead of the Victorious. Harriet smiled and walked her finger across the frozen lake to the mountains, as though it would be the easiest thing. Oh, I nearly forgot. I've something for you, Arthur. Harriet took out a brown leather book. I thought this could be your explorer's journal. Every expedition must keep rigorous records, and it's good training to get you into the habit. The Culpeper swallow symbol was embossed in silver on the front. Arthur smiled and ran his fingers across it. Thank you, Harriet. Our priority is to reach South Polaris, of course, but I want you to write everything about the journey so far and continue to record thoughts and observations as we progress. As well as a record of our journey, it could prove useful in a trial back in Lundtown. If your father's case gets reopened, you never know what might prove to be important later. Felicity clapped her hands together. Well, this is exciting. I knew the moment I read the papers something didn't fit. I felt it in my feet, you see. She turned to Harriet as though it needed explanation. It's a tingling sensation I get across the soul when things aren't right. Like if I bake a bad muffin, Harriet laughed. I don't think you could ever bake a bad muffin, Arthur said. Felicity's cheek flushed like the rising sun and she smiled widely. Always room for improvement, I say. Not with your cooking. Miss Wiggerty is really is the best in Luntown, said Harriet. Felicity wiggled her toes. Harriet passed Arthur her pencil. Maudie, if you can check the water levels, and Arthur, write as much as you can before we reach the citadel, which won't be long. I see a line on the horizon. They rushed to the side of the ship. Below the sea twinkled with sunlight, and ahead a thin band of russet coast. The first thing they'd seen other than water and sky in 2 weeks. The second continent.
The end of chapter 14.